The hallway erupted in chaos as Trayvon's massive hand wrapped around Leah's throat, slamming her against the lockers, while 30 students filmed instead of helping. Her vision blurred, lungs burning, when suddenly the double doors exploded open and a voice cut through the mob like a blade. "Let her go!" The crowd parted to reveal Aria Novak, former MMA world champion, now a mother whose deadly calm made everyone's blood run cold. What happened next would shatter West Harbor High's toxic culture forever. I'm about to tell you a story that traveled from California to New York, from London to Tokyo. Comment your city below to show me how far this incredible tale has reached. Now let's dive into what really happened that day. The morning sun streamed through West Harbor High's glass atrium, casting long shadows across the polished floors that would soon witness an act of violence so brazen it would expose the rot festering beneath the school's pristine facade. Aria Novak adjusted her backpack straps, her fingers trembling slightly as she navigated the crowded hallway toward her locker. At 16, she possessed the kind of quiet intelligence that manifested in her art and writing, rather than loud proclamations, preferring the sanctuary of the library to the chaos of the cafeteria. "Look who's trying to be invisible again," a voice boomed behind her. Leah's shoulders tensed. She didn't need to turn around to know that voice. Trayvon Hale, star linebacker, 6'3", of muscle and privilege wrapped in a Letterman jacket. His father sat on the school board, his future seemingly paved in gold toward a Division I scholarship. Behind him, his usual crew flanked the hallway like predators sensing weakness. "Just leave me alone, Trayvon," Leah muttered, fumbling with her locker combination. "What was that?" Trayvon stepped closer, his shadow engulfing her small frame. "Did the mouse just squeak?" The hallway traffic began to slow. Students sensed the shift in energy, that electric anticipation before something terrible happens. Phones emerged from pockets like weapons drawn for battle, not to help, but to record. "I said leave me alone." Leah's voice carried more strength this time, though her hands still shook. Trayvon's crew laughed, that hollow sound of followers desperate to please their alpha. Marcus Trayvon's right hand knocked Leah's books from her arms, sending papers scattering across the floor like fallen leaves. As she knelt to gather them, a photo slipped from her binder, a picture of her with her mother, at last year's Youth Foundation gala, both smiling, Aria's championship belt visible in the background. "Well, well, what do we have here?" Trayvon snatched the photo before Leah could reach it. "Little princess thinks mommy's old glory days mean something here. Give it back." Leah stood, her voice barely above a whisper. "Or what?" Trayvon held the photo high above his head, well out of her reach. "You gonna call mommy to fight your battles? Some washed-up fighter who probably can't even throw a punch anymore." The crowd grew thicker. Someone started live streaming. The comments began rolling in laughing emojis, fire symbols, popcorn gifs, modern-day gladiatorial entertainment powered by Wi-Fi and teenage cruelty. "She's not washed up," Leah said, her jaw clenching. "She helps kids. She teaches them what? How to lose." Trayvon dropped the photo and ground it beneath his Nike, the sound of tearing paper sharp in the sudden quiet. "Your mom's a has-been, and you're nothing." Something inside Leah snapped. Maybe it was months of harassment, or seeing her mother's image destroyed, or simply the weight of trying to be invisible finally becoming unbearable. She pushed Trayvon, not hard, barely enough to make him step back, but enough to cross a line. The hallway went silent. Trayvon's face darkened, that dangerous shift from mockery to rage that his teammates had seen before on the field when someone dared to challenge him. "You just made the biggest mistake of your pathetic life." His hand shot out faster than Leah could react, wrapping around her throat. The force of it slammed her back against the lockers, the metal cold against her spine. Her feet barely touched the ground as he lifted his grip, tightening like a vice. "Can't call Mommy now, can you?" He snarled, his face inches from hers. Leah's hands clawed at his wrist, her vision starting to blur at the edges. The crowd pressed closer, phones held high, capturing every second of her humiliation and fear. She could hear the comments being typed, the nervous laughter, the excitement of witnesses to violence who felt safe behind their screens. "Trayvon, man, maybe ease up," someone said weakly from the crowd. Derek from her English class, but he didn't move to help. "Shut up," Trayvon barked, not loosening his grip. "She needs to learn her place." Leah's lungs burned. Black spots danced in her vision. Through the haze, she saw the Kindness Week poster on the wall behind Trayvon's head, a mockery of bright colors and empty promises. Her legs kicked weakly, finding no purchase. "Film this," Trayvon commanded his crew. "Make sure everyone sees what happens when you disrespect me." The phones stayed steady modern witnesses to an ancient cruelty. Not one person moved to help. They were frozen, trapped between fear and fascination, complicity disguised as spectatorship. That's when the double doors at the end of the hallway opened. The sound was subtle at first, controlled footsteps on linoleum, unhurried, but purposeful. Then came the voice cutting through the mob like a sword through silk. "Let her go." The crowd parted instinctively, creating a pathway. Aria Novak stood at the end of it, and despite wearing simple jeans and a plain black t-shirt, she commanded the space with the presence of someone who had stood in octagons, surrounded by thousands of screaming fans. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face calm, terrifyingly calm. Trayvon's grip loosened slightly as he turned his head. "Who the—" I said. Aria took another step forward, her voice dropping to a register that made everyone's spine straighten. "Let my daughter go, now!" The phones swiveled toward her. Someone whispered, "Holy shit, that's really her. That's Aria Novak." Trayvon released Leah, who collapsed to the floor, coughing and gasping. But his bravado remained intact, propped up by testosterone and an audience. "So the has-been shows up. What are you gonna do, hit a minor in front of all these witnesses?" Aria moved forward, each step measured and deliberate. She didn't run, didn't charge. She simply walked with the confidence of someone who had faced down the best fighters in the world and emerged victorious. The crowd scrambled backward, creating more space. "I don't need to hit you," Aria said, kneeling beside Leah, checking her throat with gentle fingers, while keeping her eyes on Trayvon. "Are you okay, baby?" Leah nodded, tears streaming down her face, whether from pain or relief she couldn't tell. "Good." Aria stood positioning herself between her daughter and Trayvon. "Now let me explain something to you and everyone filming this. Strength isn't about who you can hurt. It's about who you protect. And right now you're about to learn the difference." "Whatever, lady. You can't touch me. Your dad isn't here." Aria's voice remained level, almost conversational. "But all these cameras are. They just recorded you assaulting my daughter, choking a minor. That's felony assault in California. 3 to 4 years minimum." Trayvon's face flushed. The phones kept recording. Someone had started an Instagram Live that already had 200 viewers and climbing. "She pushed me first," Trayvon protested, but his voice cracked slightly. "A push versus strangulation." Aria tilted her head. "You want to make that argument because I'm happy to wait here for the police to arrive and let them review all this footage." The tension in the hallway ratcheted up another notch. Trayvon's crew began to shift nervously. Marcus lowered his phone suddenly, realizing he might be recording evidence that implicated his friend. "You think you're tough?" Trayvon stepped forward, using his height advantage to loom over Aria. "You think your old championships mean anything here? This is my school." No, Aria said softly. This is a place of learning, and you're about to get an education. Trayvon made his second mistake of the day. He reached out to shove Leah again, perhaps, to reassert his dominance, perhaps out of pure stupidity. His hand never made contact. Aria moved like water fluid, inevitable and impossible to stop. She caught his wrist, pivoted her hip, and used his own momentum against him. It wasn't violent, wasn't brutal. It was simply physics and perfect technique. Trayvon's world inverted as he found himself airborne for a brief moment before landing on his back with a controlled thud that knocked the wind out of him but caused no real damage. She maintained her grip on his wrist, applying just enough pressure to keep him immobilized without causing injury. To the untrained eye, it looked almost gentle. To anyone who understood combat sports, it was a masterclass in restraint. This is called wrist control, Aria said conversationally, as if teaching a class. Right now I could dislocate your shoulder, break your elbow, or simply hold you here until security arrives. But I won't. Do you know why? Trayvon struggled, his face red with effort and humiliation. The entire hallway held its breath. Because unlike you, I understand that true strength comes from knowing when not to use it. She released him and stepped back. Get up. Trayvon scrambled to his feet, his crew rushing to help him. His Letterman jacket was askew, his carefully cultivated image of invincibility shattered in less than 10 seconds. You just assaulted a student, he shouted, his voice high and desperate. My dad's gonna sue you. You're going to jail. I defended my daughter and neutralized a threat using minimum necessary force, Aria corrected, every second of which was recorded from multiple angles. Would you like to call your father now, or should we wait for the police together? The sound of sirens in the distance made everyone freeze. Someone had already called 911. Principal Vega burst through the crowd, his face flushed and tie askew. What is going on here? This woman attacked me, Trayvon pointed at Aria. This student was choking my daughter, Aria countered calmly. I intervened. Vega looked between them, then at the crowd of students still filming. His political survival instincts kicked in immediately. Everyone to class, now, delete those videos. Don't delete anything, Officer Reyes said, appearing beside the principal. The school resource officer had been on the other side of campus, but had sprinted over when he heard the commotion. Those are evidence. I need everyone who recorded this to stay. The hallway erupted in nervous chatter. Parents would be called. Videos were already spreading beyond the school's Wi-Fi. The incident that had started as routine bullying had just become something much larger. Mrs. Novak, Vega said tightly. Please come to my office. You too, Mr. Hale. I need to take my daughter to the nurse first. Aria said, her arm around Leah's shoulders. She's fine, Trayvon spat. Stop being so dramatic. Aria turned to him, and something in her eyes made him step back. My daughter has bruises on her throat from your hands. That's documented assault. The only drama here is about to be your father trying to explain how his son became a felon before graduating high school. Coach Banner arrived, his whistle still around his neck from practice. He took one look at his star player and immediately went into damage control mode. Let's not blow this out of proportion. Kids roughhouse. Trayvon's got scouts coming next week. Roughhouse? Aria's voice could have frozen fire. He choked a girl half his size. She pushed him first, Banner said, as if that justified everything. Coach Banner, Officer Reyes interrupted. I'm going to need you to step back. This is now a criminal investigation. The word criminal rippled through the remaining students like electricity. Trayvon's face went pale. I want to see the security footage, Aria said. Vega shifted uncomfortably. Our cameras have been malfunctioning in this wing. How convenient. Aria pulled out her phone. Then it's fortunate we have about 30 student recordings. Those aren't admissible, Banner protested. In a criminal case, they absolutely are. Reyes was already taking down names. Everyone who filmed this, I need your contact information. Ms. Tran, the school counselor, pushed through the crowd. She took one look at Leah's neck, already showing the beginning of bruises, and her face hardened. We need to document this immediately. Leah, come with me. I'm going with her, Aria said. Mom, Leah whispered. Everyone's watching. Let them watch, Aria replied. Let them see what happens when someone stands up to a bully instead of just filming it. As they walked toward the nurse's office, Aria raised her voice just enough for everyone to hear. And for everyone who stood there recording instead of helping, you're complicit. Every single one of you chose entertainment over intervention. That's going to change. Behind them, Trayvon was surrounded by his crew, but the dynamic had shifted. They weren't looking at him with awe anymore. They were calculating their own liability, wondering if being associated with him was worth it. My dad's going to destroy you, Trayvon called after them. Aria paused at the door and looked back. Your dad can try, but right now you should be more worried about the fact that your assault just went viral. 3,000 views and climbing. Marcus checked his phone and went pale. Someone had already uploaded the video to TikTok with the caption, Star linebacker chokes girl gets humbled by her MMA champion mom in 3 seconds flat. The comments were pouring in and they weren't favorable to Trayvon. In the nurse's office, as the bruises on Leah's throat were photographed and documented, Aria held her daughter's hand. I'm sorry you had to go through that. You embarrassed him, Leah said softly. He's going to make my life hell now. No, he won't. Aria's voice held absolute certainty. Because this isn't ending here. This is just beginning. Through the window they could see parents starting to arrive, summoned by frantic texts from their children. News traveled fast in West Harbor, and by lunch everyone would know what had happened in that hallway. But they didn't know the half of it yet. The door burst open, and a man in an expensive suit stormed in Richard Hale, school board member, local businessman, and Trayvon's father. His face was purple with rage. How dare you put your hands on my son? Aria stood slowly, her movements deliberate and calm. Your son was choking my daughter. I intervened with minimum necessary force. You're going to jail, Hale snarled. I'll see to it personally. Do you have any idea who I am? A father whose son just committed felony assault in front of 30 witnesses? Aria suggested. Hale turned to Principal Vega. I want this woman arrested immediately. Mr. Hale, Officer Reyes interjected. Based on preliminary witness statements, your son was the aggressor. Mrs. Novak acted in defense of her minor daughter. Those witnesses are children. Their testimony means nothing. Actually, Ms. Tran said, holding up her tablet, several teachers also witnessed the end of the altercation. Mr. Peterson from room 203 has already provided a statement. Hale's jaw clenched. My son is being recruited by Division I schools. This woman has jeopardized his entire future over some harmless horseplay. Harmless. Aria pulled out her phone and showed him a photo of Leah's throat. The bruises were already dark purple, clearly showing finger marks. This is your definition of harmless. For a moment, Hale's composure cracked. He saw the bruises, saw the evidence that couldn't be explained away. But instead of backing down, he doubled down. She must have provoked him. Trayvon doesn't just attack people. Actually, Officer Reyes consulted his notebook. I have 3 prior complaints about your son's aggressive behavior. All of them were mysteriously dropped. Those were misunderstandings, Hale said quickly. Were they? Ms. Tran pulled up files on her tablet. Because I have documentation here showing that each complaint was withdrawn after meetings between you and the victims' families. The room went silent. The implication hung in the air like smoke from a fired gun. "You're suggesting I intimidated those families?" Hale's voice was dangerous. "I'm stating facts," Ms. Tran replied calmly. "The interpretation is yours." Vega stepped between them, ever the politician. "Let's all calm down. We need to handle this properly through official channels." "The official channels that have protected Trayvon until now?" Aria asked. "The same channels that somehow never have working security cameras when he's involved." "That's a serious accusation," Vega warned. "It's an observation," Aria corrected. "One that I'm sure the media will find interesting when they learn that a school board member's son has been systematically terrorizing students with impunity." "You contact the media and I'll sue you for defamation," Hale threatened. "Truth is an absolute defense against defamation," Aria replied. "And we have video evidence of the truth." Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and couldn't suppress a small smile. "Speaking of which, the video now has 50,000 views. The internet seems to have strong opinions about your son's behavior." Hale pulled out his own phone, his face growing paler as he scrolled through the comments. His son's carefully crafted image as a star athlete was being systematically destroyed in real time by thousands of strangers who had witnessed his true nature. "We need to have an emergency board meeting," Hale said to Vega. "Tonight." "To address the assault?" Aria asked innocently. "To address your reckless endangerment of a student," Hale snapped. "I look forward to it," Aria said. "I assume it will be public. The community deserves to know how the board handles violent assault in their schools." Hale's phone rang. He answered it, his face growing increasingly grim as he listened. "Yes, sir, I understand. Yes, I'll handle it." He hung up and glared at Aria. "That was the superintendent. Apparently several news outlets have already called asking for statements." "The internet works fast," Aria observed. "This isn't over," Hale warned, pointing at her. "You've made a powerful enemy today." "No," Aria corrected. "I've exposed a bully who happens to have a powerful father. There's a difference." As Hale stormed out, Coach Banner lingered. "Mrs. Novak, surely we can work something out. Trayvon's made mistakes, but he's just a kid. This could ruin his life." "He nearly strangled my daughter," Aria said flatly. "He got carried away. You know how teenage boys are all testosterone and no sense." "That's an explanation, not an excuse," Aria replied. "And it's exactly that attitude that's enabled him to terrorize other students without consequences." "You don't understand," Banner pleaded. "We have a shot at state championships. Scouts are coming. This could cost the whole team." "Then maybe the team should have thought about that before they stood around filming while their captain assaulted a girl," Aria suggested. Banner's face reddened. "You're going to destroy these kids' futures over one incident." "Trayvon destroyed his own future the moment he wrapped his hands around my daughter's throat," Aria said. "Everyone else made their choice when they decided to be spectators instead of human beings." Through the nurse's office window, they could see the hallway clearing as students were finally herded to class. But the damage was done. Every student in West Harbor High had either witnessed or heard about what had happened. Videos were being shared, downloaded, and backed up faster than any authority could hope to contain them. "Mom?" Leah said quietly. "I don't want to be the girl who got her mom to fight her battles." Aria knelt beside her daughter, taking her hands gently. "You're not. You're the girl who survived an assault, and whose mother made sure there were consequences. There's no shame in having someone who loves you stand up for you when you can't stand up for yourself." "Everyone's going to hate me now." "No, baby. Some will. The ones who benefited from the way things were. But others, the ones who've been afraid, who've been victims themselves, they're going to see that bullies can be stopped." Officer Reyes knocked and entered. I've collected 15 different video recordings. They all show the same thing, clear assault by Trayvon Hale. I'm going to have to bring him in for questioning. His father will have a lawyer there in minutes, Vega warned. That's his right, Reyes said. But it doesn't change the evidence. As if summoned by the mention of lawyers, a woman in a sharp suit entered the office. I'm Patricia Chen, representing the Hale family. My client will not be answering any questions without me present. That's fine, Reyes said. But he'll need to come to the station. This is ridiculous, Chen said. He's a minor. This was a school altercation. This was felony assault, Reyes corrected. And given his size and strength relative to the victim, it could be upgraded to attempted murder if the DA feels the strangulation was severe enough. The word murder changed the atmosphere in the room instantly. That's preposterous, Chen said, but her voice lacked conviction. Is it? Aria asked. How long does someone have to choke another person before it becomes attempted murder? 10 seconds 20. How long was my daughter without oxygen? Nobody answered, because nobody wanted to do that math. A knock at the door interrupted the standoff. A teacher entered Mr. Peterson, who had witnessed the incident. But instead of addressing the adults, he walked directly to Leah. I wanted to apologize, he said quietly. I saw what was happening. I should have intervened sooner. I was calling security, but I should have physically stepped in. I'm sorry I failed you. It was the first genuine apology Leah had received, and it broke something in her. She started to cry, not the silent tears from before, but real body-shaking sobs. Aria wrapped her arms around her daughter, and for a moment everyone else in the room became irrelevant. Thank you, Aria said to Peterson over Leah's head. That means more than you know. Peterson nodded and turned to Vega. I've been teaching here for 15 years. This culture of recording instead of intervening, of protecting athletes over victims, it ends now, or I'm going to the school board myself. Mr. Peterson, Vega warned. No, Peterson interrupted. I've stayed quiet too long. We all have. How many kids have been hurt while we looked the other way because the aggressor could throw a football or their parents made donations? It stops now. He left before anyone could respond, but his words lingered like an accusation. Chen cleared her throat. My client is willing to apologize and accept a suspension if Mrs. Novak agrees not to press charges. No, Aria said immediately. Excuse me. An apology now when he's facing consequences means nothing. A suspension that will be quietly reduced to nothing once the attention dies down. That's not justice. That's the same system that created this problem. What do you want then? Chen asked. I want real change. I want every student who filmed instead of helping to attend mandatory intervention training. I want Trayvon to face real consequences, legal ones, and I want this school to implement a zero-tolerance policy for bullying that actually has teeth. You're asking for the impossible, Vega said. No. Aria stood helping Leah to her feet. I'm asking for the minimum, and if the school won't provide it, I'll make sure the media, the state education board, and every parent in this district knows exactly what kind of environment you're fostering here. Her phone rang. She glanced at it and answered. Yes, really. When I understand, we'll be there. She hung up and looked at the assembled group. That was Channel 7 News. They're sending a crew. Apparently, the video has gone viral enough that it's become a national story about bystander culture in schools. Vega went pale. Chen started furiously typing on her phone. Officer Reyes simply nodded as if he'd expected this. You orchestrated this, Hale accused, having returned to the room. I didn't upload the video, Aria pointed out. Your son's victims did that. The ones who finally had proof that couldn't be buried or bought off. Victims plural, Chen asked sharply, glancing at her client. Ask around, Ms. Tran suggested. Now that one person has come forward, others are finding their courage. Indeed, outside the office, a small crowd of students had gathered. Not Traven's crew, but others' quiet kids, targeted kids, the ones who had learned to navigate the hallways like prey animals avoiding predators. They weren't saying anything yet, but their presence spoke volumes. "We should go," Aria said to Leah. "You need rest, and we have a board meeting to prepare for." "This isn't over," Hale repeated his earlier threat. "You're right," Aria agreed. "It's just beginning. And Mr. Hale, you might want to check your son's social media. The internet has a long memory, and college recruiters know how to use Google." As they left the office, Aria heard Chen urgently whispering to Hale about damage control. But damage control only worked when the damage was limited. This had already spread beyond West Harbor, beyond California. The video was being shared with hashtags like #BystanderCulture and #StandUpNotFilm. In the parking lot, as Aria helped Leah into their car, a girl approached them hesitantly. She was small, younger than Leah, with the kind of hunched shoulders that spoke of trying to remain invisible. "Mrs. Novak," she said quietly, "I just wanted to say thank you. Trayvon, he's hurt a lot of us, but nobody ever did anything before." "What's your name?" Aria asked gently. "Sarah. Sarah Kim." "Sarah, would you be willing to tell your story? With your parents' permission, of course." Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes. "I have videos of things he did to me to others. We all started recording because nobody believed us without proof." Aria felt her heart break a little more. These children had turned to documentation because the adults who were supposed to protect them had failed so systematically. "Send them to Officer Reyes," Aria advised. "And Sarah, you're brave for speaking up." As Sarah walked away, Leah spoke for the first time since leaving the office. "Mom, there are more, a lot more. Kids he's hurt, teachers who looked away, coaches who covered for him." "Then we expose it all," Aria said, starting the car. "Won't that make things worse for me?" Aria looked at her daughter in the rearview mirror, seeing not just the scared 16-year-old, but the strong woman she would become. "Sometimes baby things have to get worse before they get better. But I promise you this, you won't face it alone. Not anymore." As they drove away from West Harbor High, neither of them saw the figure watching from a second-story window. Principal Vega stood there, phone pressed to his ear, speaking urgently to someone about damage control and liability. But even he knew it was too late. The video had over 200,000 views now. Parents were calling, demanding answers. News vans were already setting up in the front parking lot. The revolution that had started with one mother defending her daughter was about to become something much larger. And Trayvon Hale, the untouchable star athlete, was about to learn that in the age of social media, nobody was untouchable anymore. His phone, confiscated by Officer Reyes, contained 3 years of messages, threats, and bragging about his exploits. His crew's phones held more evidence. The culture of documentation that had enabled the bullying was about to become its undoing. Back at the school in the hallway where it had all happened, maintenance was already cleaning Leah's blood from the locker where her head had hit. But they couldn't clean away what had been exposed. Students whispered in clusters, teachers met in urgent conferences, and everyone wondered the same thing: what would happen at tonight's emergency board meeting. The smart money was on Hale, using his influence to bury this like he'd buried everything else. But the smart money hadn't counted on Aria Novak, who had fought in octagons where defeat meant humiliation, and victory meant survival. She had never lost a fight that mattered. And this one mattered more than any championship belt ever could. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the Novak home as Aria applied antibiotic cream to the bruises on Leah's throat. The house felt different now, charged with an energy that comes after crossing a point of no return. Aria's phone hadn't stopped buzzing, texts, calls, notifications from social media platforms she didn't even know existed. 400,000 views, Leah said quietly, looking at her own phone. The comments, "Mom, they're calling for Trayvon to be expelled." "Don't read those," Aria said gently, taking the phone away. "The internet can be as cruel as any bully." A knock at the door interrupted them. Aria peered through the peephole to see a woman in her 40s, professionally dressed, but with tired eyes. She opened the door cautiously. "Mrs. Novak, I'm Jennifer Martinez. My son goes to West Harbor. I saw what happened today." The woman's voice cracked. "Trayvon hurt my boy last year, broke his wrist. We were told it was an accident during gym class, but come in," Aria said, opening the door wider. Jennifer entered, clutching her purse like a lifeline. "We tried to file a complaint. Mr. Hale visited us personally, said his lawyers would destroy us if we pursued it. My husband had just lost his job. We couldn't afford a legal battle." "How many others are there?" Aria asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "At least a dozen that I know of. We have a group chat parents who've been silenced. When we saw that video today, when we saw you stand up to him." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. "You did what we were all too scared to do." Aria's phone rang. She recognized the number, Channel 7 News. "Mrs. Novak, this is Patricia Wong. We're going live in an hour about the incident at West Harbor High. Would you be willing to give us a statement?" "I'll do you one better," Aria said, looking at Jennifer. "I'll give you multiple statements. How many cameras can you bring?" Within 30 minutes, the Novaks' living room had transformed into an impromptu gathering space. Parents arrived one by one, some with their children, all with stories. Sarah Kim came with her mother, bringing a folder of printed screenshots. Another family brought medical records from an emergency room visit. Each story was worse than the last, painting a picture of systematic abuse enabled by power and money. "He cornered my daughter in an empty classroom," one father said, his hands clenched. "When she reported it suddenly, her grades started dropping. Teachers said she was distracted and not applying herself. My son quit the football team because of the hazing Trayvon organized," another parent added. "Coach Banner said boys will be boys and threatened his college recommendations if he made trouble." Aria listened to each story, her resolve hardening with every word. This wasn't just about one incident in a hallway. It was about a culture of corruption that had infected the entire school. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Back off, or things get worse for your daughter." She showed it to Officer Reyes, who had arrived to take additional statements. "That's witness intimidation. I'll trace the number." "It's probably from a burner phone," Jennifer said bitterly. "That's what they did to us." The doorbell rang again. This time it was Principal Vega himself, looking haggard and desperate. "Mrs. Novak, we need to talk." "We're talking right now." Aria gestured to the room full of parents. "Would you like to explain to them why their children's suffering was systematically ignored?" Vega's eyes darted around the room, recognizing faces, calculating political damage. "This is not the appropriate venue." "You're right," Patricia Wong said, entering with her camera crew. "The appropriate venue was your office every time these parents came to you for help. But since that didn't work, we're doing this here." "You can't film without permission," Vega protested. "This is private property, and I give permission," Aria said. "Unless you'd prefer we move this to the school board meeting tonight." Vega's phone rang. He answered it, his face growing paler with each word. "Yes, sir. I understand. Yes, the lawyers are... I see." He hung up and looked at Aria with something approaching fear. "The superintendent wants to see you. Now." "Tell him he can come here," Aria said. We're not done collecting evidence. Evidence, Vega repeated weakly. Sarah Kim's mother stood up, her voice stronger than her small frame suggested. Evidence of criminal conspiracy, assault, cover-ups, witness intimidation. My husband is a prosecutor, Principal Vega. He's very interested in what we've documented. The room erupted as more parents began sharing their evidence. Photos of injuries, threatening messages, recordings of meetings where they were pressured to stay quiet. The camera crew captured it all, while Vega stood frozen, watching his career crumble in real time. This is going to destroy the school, he said finally. No, Aria corrected. This is going to save it. The destruction already happened, you just covered it up with trophies and test scores. A commotion outside drew their attention. Through the window they could see Traven Hale being escorted to a police car, his father arguing with officers, while news crews filmed everything. The arrest had happened at football practice in front of his entire team and coaching staff. They arrested him, one parent gasped. Officer Reyes checked his phone. The DA reviewed the videos. Given the severity of the assault and the evidence of prior incidents, they're charging him as an adult. Aggravated assault, criminal intimidation, and conspiracy. Conspiracy? Vega asked, his voice barely a whisper. The group chat messages between him and his crew planning their harassment campaigns. They were stupid enough to document everything. Reyes showed them his tablet. They had a scoring system for making kids cry. Extra points if they could make someone transfer schools. Leah, who had been quiet throughout, suddenly stood. I want to speak at the board meeting tonight. Baby, you don't have to, Aria began. Yes, I do. They need to hear from us, the students. Not just the parents, not just the lawyers. Us. Sarah Kim stood too. I'll speak. One by one, other students in the room stood. The quiet ones, the invisible ones, the ones who had learned to navigate their school like a minefield. They were done being silent. Patricia Wong turned to her cameraman. We're going live in 10 minutes. This is bigger than we thought. As they prepared for the broadcast, Coach Banner arrived, flanked by 2 assistant coaches. This ends now, he declared, pushing past the news crew. You're destroying these boys' futures over nothing. Nothing, Jennifer Martinez stood, her voice shaking with rage. Your star player broke my son's wrist. That was an accident. No, it wasn't. Her son, quiet until now, finally exploded. He said he was going to break it. He told everyone at practice the day before. You were there, coach. You laughed. The room went silent. Even the news crew stopped setting up to stare at Banner. That's a lie, Banner said, but his voice lacked conviction. I have the video, the boy said, pulling out his phone. Tommy Chen was recording practice for the highlight reel. He caught you laughing when Traven said he was going to teach the quitter a lesson. He played the video. The audio was clear, Traven's voice bragging about his plans, Banner's distinctive laugh in response, even his words, just don't leave any permanent damage. Patricia Wong gestured frantically to her cameraman to make sure they were recording. This was no longer just a story about bullying, it was about institutional corruption. Banner's assistant coaches stepped away from him, creating distance both physical and professional. One of them, Coach Davis, spoke up. I tried to report this, multiple times. HR said it was being handled. By whom? Aria asked, though she suspected she knew. Mr. Hale. He's not just on the school board, he's the biggest booster for the athletic program. He essentially owns the football team. Aria's phone rang. It was her lawyer, someone she'd hoped never to need in this capacity. Aria, I'm watching the news. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. But you need legal protection. Hale's already filed a civil suit against you for assault. Let him, Aria said loud enough for everyone to hear. Discovery goes both ways. I can't wait to see what comes out when we subpoena the school's records. Vega's phone buzzed constantly. He looked at it with growing panic. The board meeting's been moved to the auditorium. They're expecting hundreds of people. Good, Aria said. Transparency shouldn't happen in closed rooms. The news crew went live with Patricia Wong standing in Aria's living room, surrounded by parents and students. We're here with breaking news about what started as a single incident of bullying at West Harbor High, but has exploded into revelations of systematic abuse and cover-ups. As she reported, more cars pulled up outside. Parents who had seen the broadcast were arriving, some crying, others furious, all with stories. The small gathering was becoming a movement. Richard Hale appeared on the lawn, trying to push through to the house. "This is slander. I'll sue every one of you." "Mr. Hale." Patricia Wong thrust a microphone at him. "How do you respond to allegations that you've been covering up your son's violent behavior for years?" "No comment." "What about the evidence that you threatened families who tried to report your son?" "That's a lie." Jennifer Martinez stepped onto the porch. "I have the recording of you in my living room, Mr. Hale. Would you like me to play it for everyone?" Hale's lawyer, Patricia Chen, grabbed his arm. "Don't say another word." But it was too late. Someone in the crowd had been live streaming, and Hale's red-faced denial was already spreading across social media, juxtaposed with videos of his son's assault. Inside, Aria received a call from an unexpected source, the California State Athletic Association. "Mrs. Novak, we've been monitoring the situation. Effective immediately, West Harbor High's football team is suspended from all state competitions, pending investigation." "What about the players who weren't involved?" Aria asked. "They can transfer or wait for the investigation to conclude. But any program that operates like this cannot be allowed to compete." When she announced this to the room, Coach Banner sank into a chair like a puppet with cut strings. 20 years. I've been building this program for 20 years. "And destroying kids for just as long," Sarah's mother shot back. The superintendent finally arrived, looking like a man walking to his execution. With him were 3 school board members. Conspicuously, Richard Hale was absent. "Mrs. Novak," the superintendent began, "we need to find a resolution that doesn't destroy the entire district." "The district destroyed itself," Aria replied. "We're just shining a light on the wreckage." "What do you want?" one board member asked desperately. "Justice. Real change. Not promises, not policies that won't be enforced. Actual change." "Be specific." Aria had been thinking about this since leaving the school. First, every administrator and coach who participated in the cover-ups is terminated. Second, mandatory intervention training for all students and staff. Third, a truly independent review board for all bullying complaints with no school employees or board members involved. Fourth, restitution for the victims from the district's insurance. "That could bankrupt us," the superintendent protested. "Then maybe you should have thought about that before enabling a serial predator," Jennifer said. The news crew was capturing every word. The live streams were spreading faster than anyone could track. West Harbor scandal was trending nationally. Leah stood up again, her voice stronger now. "I want to add something. We need a student advocacy program run by students with real power to investigate and report. No more going through administrators who care more about reputation than safety." The superintendent looked at the board members, then at the room full of angry parents and traumatized students, then at the news cameras. "We'll present your demands at tonight's meeting." "They're not demands," Aria corrected. "They're the minimum requirements for us not to pursue federal civil rights violations. Title IX alone could bury you, and that's before we get to the criminal conspiracy charges." As the officials left, defeated and demoralized, the room burst into spontaneous applause. Parents hugged their children. Students high-fived each other, and for the first time in years, hope flickered in West Harbor. But the battle was far from over. Aria's phone showed a text from her lawyer. Hale's bringing in a team from Los Angeles. Big guns. Be ready. She looked at the room full of allies she hadn't had that morning. Everyone, the board meeting is in 2 hours. They're going to try to minimize this to make it go away. We can't let that happen. What do you need us to do? Jennifer asked. Show up. Speak truth. And don't back down no matter how much they threaten or promise. As people began to leave to prepare for the meeting, Ms. Tran approached Aria privately. There's something else you should know. I've been documenting everything for 3 years. Every complaint, every cover-up, every time I was told to alter records. I have it all backed up off-site. Why didn't you come forward before? I was one person against a system. But now, she looked around at the mobilizing parents. Now I'm not alone. The sun was setting as Aria and Leah finally had a moment alone. They stood on their porch watching cars arrive at the school across town, the auditorium lights blazing like a beacon. Mom, are you scared? Leah asked. Terrified, Aria admitted. But fear isn't always bad. Sometimes it tells you that what you're doing matters. Traven's friends are saying I'm ruining his life. No, baby. He ruined his own life. You're just making sure he can't ruin anyone else's. A car pulled up, and out stepped someone Aria hadn't expected, her old coach from her fighting days. Marcus Rodriguez, now in his 60s, but still imposing. Heard you were in a fight, he said with a slight smile. Thought you might need your corner man. This isn't the Octagon, Marcus. No, he agreed, looking toward the school. This is harder. In the ring, you only had to beat one opponent. Here, you're fighting a whole system. Any advice? Same as always. Keep your guard up, watch for the sucker punch, and when you see an opening, don't hesitate. As they prepared to leave for the meeting, Aria's phone showed the video had reached 2 million views. The comments section had become a battlefield between Traven's defenders and supporters of the victims. But more importantly, similar stories were emerging from schools across the country. The hashtag had evolved from #West Harbor Scandal to #No More Bystanders. Ready? Aria asked Leah. No, Leah admitted. But let's go anyway. They drove toward the school, joining a stream of cars, heading to what would either be the end of their fight or the beginning of something much larger. Behind them, the sun set on the old West Harbor High, the one where bullies ruled and victims suffered in silence. Tomorrow's sun would rise on something different. Whether it would be better remained to be seen, but it would never be the same. As they parked and walked toward the auditorium, Aria saw him, Traven Hale, released on bail, standing with his father and their team of lawyers. Their eyes met across the parking lot. He looked smaller somehow. His Letterman jacket, absent his crew, nowhere to be seen. The predator had become prey, and he knew it. But Richard Hale's expression promised war. This wasn't over. The board meeting wouldn't be a resolution. It would be round 2 of a fight that was just beginning. The auditorium doors stood open, voices spilling out from the packed room. Somewhere in there, justice waited. Or perhaps just another battle in a war that had been brewing for years. Aria took Leah's hand, and together they walked into the chaos, ready for whatever came next. The auditorium was electric with tension as Aria and Leah pushed through the crowd. Every seat was filled with people lining the walls and spilling into the aisles. The stage held a long table where 5 board members sat, Richard Hale conspicuously positioned at the center despite the controversy surrounding him. His lawyers flanked him like bodyguards, their expensive suits a sharp contrast to the everyday clothes of the assembled parents. There must be 500 people here, Leah whispered, her hand tightening around Aria's. The superintendent stood at the podium, tapping the microphone nervously. Please, everyone, we need order. This is still an official board meeting with rules and procedures. Your rules protected a predator, someone shouted from the back. The crowd murmured agreement. Richard Hale leaned into his microphone. Anyone who disrupts these proceedings will be removed by security. You mean the same security that never seems to work when your son is choking students? Jennifer Martinez called out. The crowd erupted in bitter laughter. The superintendent raised his hands for silence. We're here to address the incident from this morning. Incidents. Plural, Sarah Kim's mother corrected. Years of incidents. We will address all concerns, the superintendent said weakly. But first we need to hear from the involved parties. Mr. Hale, would you like to begin? Richard Hale stood his bearing, that of a man used to commanding rooms. My son has been the victim of a vicious assault by an adult who invaded school property and attacked a minor. The video evidence clearly shows. The video shows your son strangling my daughter, Aria interrupted, standing. Would you like us to play it for everyone? Patricia Wong, stationed with her camera crew in the corner, held up her tablet. I have it queued up in 4K resolution if anyone wants to see it. That won't be necessary, another board member said quickly. We've all reviewed the footage. Have you reviewed this footage? Ms. Tran stood connecting her laptop to the auditorium's projection system. 3 years of documented complaints against Traven Hale that were buried. The screen lit up with email after email complaint forms, medical reports. The crowd gasped as they saw the extent of the cover-up. Dates, names, injuries, all meticulously documented and systematically ignored. You can't just show that without authorization, Hale protested. Actually, I can, Ms. Tran replied calmly. Whistleblower protection laws are quite clear about exposing systematic abuse and corruption. Principal Vega stood abruptly. Ms. Tran, you're suspended pending investigation. You can't suspend her for telling the truth, a teacher called out. More teachers stood in solidarity, at least a dozen of them. Mr. Peterson, the teacher who had apologized to Leah earlier, stepped forward. If you suspend her, you'll have to suspend all of us. We're done being complicit. The board members exchanged panicked looks. This was spiraling beyond their control. Perhaps, the superintendent said desperately, we should move to the proposed resolutions. You mean the pathetic half measures you're offering to make this go away? Aria asked. She pulled out a document. 2-day suspension for Trayvon sensitivity training for staff and a review of policies. That's your response to years of covered-up violence. Mrs. Novak, Patricia Chen. The Hales lawyer stood smoothly. Your emotional response is understandable, but we need to deal in facts, not feelings. The fact is, you assaulted a minor. I used minimum necessary force to stop an ongoing assault, Aria corrected. Every combat sports expert who's reviewed the video agrees. I have their statements here. She held up a tablet showing messages from renowned MMA coaches and self-defense experts, all confirming her technique was textbook defense, not assault. Additionally, Aria continued, I have here a statement from the district attorney's office confirming that no charges will be filed against me while your client faces multiple felony charges. The crowd stirred as Officer Reyes entered, his expression grim. He walked directly to the board's table. I need to inform you that 3 more students have come forward with assault complaints against Traven Hale in the last hour. We're also investigating evidence of grade manipulation for athletes. This is a witch hunt, Richard Hale exploded, standing so forcefully his chair toppled backward. You're destroying a young man's future over typical teenage behavior. Typical. A man in the crowd stood tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a Marine Corps jacket. My daughter tried to kill herself after your son's typical teenage behavior. She left a note detailing everything he did to her. Would you like me to read it? The auditorium fell silent. Even Hale's lawyers looked uncomfortable. Please, the man continued, his voice breaking. Tell me what's typical about driving a 14-year-old girl to attempt suicide. Leah suddenly stood, her voice cutting through the silence. I want to speak. The superintendent nodded reluctantly. You have 3 minutes. I don't need 3 minutes, Leah said, walking to the front. I just need you to listen, really listen. Every day I walked these halls in fear. Not just of Trayvon, but of the system that protected him. Teachers who looked away, administrators who made excuses, students who filmed instead of helping. You want to talk about facts? Here's a fact: I have bruises on my throat from trying to get an education at your school. She pulled down her collar slightly, revealing the dark purple marks. The crowd gasped. Several people were crying. Another fact, Leah continued. There are dozens of us, victims who stayed silent because we saw what happened to those who spoke up. Their grades mysteriously dropped. They were cut from teams. Their families were threatened with lawsuits. That's the real West Harbor High, not the shiny brochures you send to prospective families. Trayvon, who had been sitting silently with his legal team, suddenly stood. You're all lying. This is just because you're jealous of— Sit down, Trayvon, his own lawyer said sharply. No, they're making me out to be some monster. I'm the victim here. You're the victim. Sarah Kim stood, her small voice growing stronger. You cornered me in the equipment room. You told me no one would believe me because you were important and I was nothing. You were right, no one believed me. Until today. One by one, students began standing. Not speaking, just standing. 10, 20, 50 students on their feet, silent testimony to what they'd endured or witnessed. Richard Hale's face had gone from red to pale. This is orchestrated. This is— His phone rang loud in the tense silence. He answered it, his expression crumbling as he listened. What do you mean, dropped? All of them. That's impossible. He hung up, staring at his phone in disbelief. Patricia Chen leaned over, whispering urgently. Whatever she said made him sink into his chair like a deflated balloon. What happened? Another board member asked. Chen cleared her throat. The university recruiting programs have withdrawn their interest in Mr. Hale. All of them. The crowd erupted. Some cheered, others simply nodded with grim satisfaction. Trayvon looked like he'd been punched in the gut. This is your fault, he screamed at Leah. You ruined my life. No, Aria said firmly. You ruined your own life. My daughter just refused to let you ruin hers. The superintendent tried to regain control. Please, we need to return to the matter at hand, the proposed resolutions. Your proposals are inadequate. A woman in a business suit stood. I'm Rebecca Chen from the ACLU. We're prepared to file a federal lawsuit for systematic civil rights violations unless real changes are implemented immediately. The board members huddled in panicked whispers. This had escalated far beyond their ability to contain. What do you want? The superintendent asked desperately. Aria stood again. Complete restructuring. Every administrator who participated in cover-ups removed. Independent oversight board with parent and student representation. Mandatory reporting protocols that bypass school administration. Full restitution for victims. And criminal investigation into the conspiracy to suppress reports. That would destroy the school, Vega protested. The school is already destroyed. Marcus Rodriguez, Aria's old coach, spoke from his seat. You're just trying to save your careers. If we agree to this, another board member said carefully, Will the lawsuits stop? That depends, Rebecca Chen from the ACLU responded, on whether the changes are real or just paper promises. Richard Hale suddenly stood again, his composure shattered. I need to speak with my son, privately. Sit down, Mr. Hale, the superintendent said firmly. You've lost the right to direct these proceedings. I'm still a board member. Actually, another board member interrupted. I move to remove Richard Hale from the board due to conflict of interest and potential criminal involvement in covering up his son's actions. Second, another member said quickly. You can't do this, Hale shouted. All in favor. 4 hands raised. Only Hale kept his down. Motion carries. Mr. Hale, please step down from the board table. Security officers moved forward, not threateningly, but making their presence known. Hale looked around wildly, searching for support that wasn't coming. This isn't over, he said to Aria. You think you've won, I'll destroy you in civil court. Mr. Hale. Officer Reyes stepped forward. I need you to come with me. We have questions about witness intimidation and conspiracy to obstruct justice. The auditorium erupted as Richard Hale was escorted out. Traven tried to follow his father, but was stopped by his own lawyers who were desperately trying to salvage something from the wreckage. Ms. Tran connected her laptop again. There's more. Financial records showing Booster Club funds diverted to silence victims, grade changes for athletes, SAT scores that were falsified. Each revelation was another blow to the school's reputation. Parents who had come to support the administration were now looking horrified at what their children had been exposed to. I want my daughter transferred immediately, one mother said. This place is toxic. If everyone transfers, there won't be a school left, Vega said desperately. Then maybe there shouldn't be, Aria said. Not until it's rebuilt from the ground up. A commotion at the door drew everyone's attention. A group of football players entered still in their practice gear. They walked past their suspended coach, past Trayvon, and stood facing the crowd. The team captain, a senior named David Park, spoke. We want to apologize. We knew what Trayvon was doing. We stood by and let it happen because we were scared of losing our positions, our scholarships. We were cowards. He pulled off his Letterman jacket and dropped it on the floor. This jacket came at the cost of other students' safety. I don't want it anymore. One by one, other players followed suit, removing their jackets and leaving them in a pile. It was a powerful symbol. The social hierarchy that had protected Trayvon was crumbling. Coach Banner stood abruptly. You boys are making a mistake. You're throwing away your futures. No, David interrupted. We're taking them back. Win at any cost isn't winning. It's losing everything that matters. The crowd applauded, many crying openly at the unexpected display of integrity from the very team that had been part of the problem. Patricia Wong motioned to her cameraman to capture everything. This wasn't just local news anymore. It was a national story about courage, accountability, and change. The superintendent stood looking older than his years. The board will recess to discuss the demands, proposals. We'll reconvene in 1 hour. As people began to mill about, Aria felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Trayvon's mother, a woman she'd never met before. She was crying. I'm sorry, she whispered. I knew what he was becoming, but Richard said boys needed to be tough. I should have protected those children. I should have protected my own son from becoming a monster. Before Aria could respond, the woman hurried away, leaving behind the echo of a mother's regret. Laya was surrounded by other students, all sharing their stories, finding strength in numbers. The silence had been broken, and the truth was flooding out like water through a broken dam. Mrs. Novak, a young reporter approached. This has gone viral worldwide. No More Bystanders is trending in 12 countries. Schools across America are announcing policy reviews. You've started something huge." "I didn't start anything," Aria corrected. "The bullies started it. The system that protected them enabled it. We're just finishing it." An hour later, the board reconvened. The superintendent looked defeated as he read from prepared notes. "The board has voted to accept all proposed changes. Effective immediately, Principal Vega Coach Banner and 3 other administrators are terminated. An independent oversight committee will be formed within 48 hours. The district will establish a victim restitution fund, and we're requesting state intervention to oversee the restructuring." The crowd erupted in celebration, but Aria remained focused. "What about criminal investigations? The district attorney has agreed to pursue all criminal charges related to the cover-up," Officer Reyes announced. "This is just the beginning of the legal process." As people began to leave, exhausted but victorious, Traven approached Aria and Leah. His lawyers tried to stop him, but he shrugged them off. "I wanted to," he began, then stopped. For the first time, he looked like what he was, a 17-year-old who'd been given too much power and no boundaries. "My dad always said winning was everything, that people like you were weak." "And now?" Aria asked. "Now he's going to prison. I'm facing felony charges and my life is over." He looked at Leah. "I'm sorry. That doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry." "You're right," Leah said quietly. "It doesn't fix anything. But it's a start." As Traven walked away with his legal team, Aria saw something she hadn't expected, several of his former victims watching him with something approaching pity. The monster had been revealed as a broken child raised by a corrupt system. Outside the parking lot was filled with news vans from national networks. The story had exploded beyond anyone's imagination. Aria's phone showed dozens of messages from other parents across the country asking for advice on fighting their own school's toxic cultures. "Mom," Leah said as they walked to their car, "this isn't over, is it? No, baby, the real work is just beginning. Changing policies is one thing. Changing culture, that takes time." As they drove home, they passed West Harbor High. The trophy case that had held decades of championships stood empty. The administration had already begun removing the symbols of a program built on fear and silence. Tomorrow, the school would begin its transformation. Some would resist, others would embrace it. But one thing was certain: the days of standing by while bullies ruled were over. The video that had started it all now had 10 million views. But more importantly, it had sparked a conversation about what schools owed their students beyond test scores and trophies. Safety, dignity, justice. In her bedroom that night, Leah looked at the bruises on her throat in the mirror. They would fade in time, but what they represented the moment she'd stopped being invisible, the moment her mother had stood between her and danger that would last forever. Downstairs, Aria sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by legal documents and messages from supporters around the world. The fight wasn't close to over. The Hales would sue. The criminal cases would drag on. The school's transformation would face resistance. But for tonight, for just this moment, they had won something precious proof that ordinary people could stand up to systematic injustice and win. 3 days had passed since the explosive board meeting, but the aftershocks continued to ripple through West Harbor. Aria stood in the school's gymnasium, watching as students filed in for the mandatory intervention training she'd demanded. The space that had once hosted pep rallies celebrating Traven's victories now served a different purpose: teaching students how to stand up instead of standing by. "They look scared," Marcus Rodriguez observed, standing beside her. He'd agreed to help run the session, bringing decades of experience in teaching discipline and respect. Good, Aria replied. They should be scared of becoming complicit in someone else's pain. The doors opened again, and Aria tensed as Trayvon Hale entered, accompanied by a court officer. Part of his bail conditions included attending these sessions. His presence sent whispers through the assembled students, some backing away, others glaring with undisguised anger. "This should be interesting," Marcus muttered. Ms. Tran took the microphone, her reinstatement having been fast-tracked after the state intervention team arrived. "Today isn't about punishment. It's about learning. Learning how to recognize abuse, how to intervene safely, and how to support victims." "Why should we listen to you?" a voice called out, one of Trayvon's former teammates. "You let this happen for years." "You're right," Ms. Tran admitted, surprising everyone with her honesty. "I failed you. I documented everything but didn't fight hard enough to stop it. That's why we're all here to learn from our failures." Aria stepped forward, commanding attention without saying a word. The bruises on Leah's throat had faded, but everyone remembered the video the moment when she'd transformed from concerned mother to protector. "I'm going to teach you something," she began. "Not how to fight, but how to prevent fights. The difference between being a bystander and being an upstander." She demonstrated verbal de-escalation techniques, showing how tone and body language could diffuse situations. Then she called for volunteers for physical intervention training, safe ways to separate combatants without becoming victims themselves. "What if the bully is bigger?" Sarah Kim asked, her voice small but determined. "Size doesn't matter when you're not alone," Aria replied. She had 5 students stand together. "Bullies rely on isolation. Break that, and you break their power." Trayvon shifted uncomfortably in his seat as Aria continued. "The person who filmed my daughter being choked, you had enough time to record 30 seconds of video. In that time, you could have called for help, yelled to distract the attacker, or simply said, 'Stop.' Instead, you chose entertainment over intervention." "Easy for you to say," another student protested. "You're a champion fighter. We're just kids." "I wasn't always a champion," Aria said. "I was once a scared girl, too, watching others get hurt, too afraid to act. Until one day I realized my silence made me complicit." She pulled up a photo on the projector herself as a teenager, small and unremarkable. "This was me at 15. I watched my best friend get bullied every day. I told myself I couldn't help that I'd become a target too. Then she tried to kill herself." The gymnasium went silent. "She survived, but our friendship didn't. She couldn't forgive me for standing by while she suffered. That's when I started training not to become a fighter, but to never be helpless again." A hand raised in the crowd. It was David Park, the football captain who'd thrown down his Letterman jacket. "What happened to your friend?" "She became a social worker, helping kids who have no one else. We reconnected years later. She forgave me, but I've never forgiven myself." Aria's voice carried the weight of old regret. "That's why I'm here. So you don't carry that same burden." The training continued with role-playing scenarios. Students practiced intervention techniques while Aria and Marcus provided guidance. It was awkward at first, years of ingrained passivity hard to overcome, but gradually they began to find their voices. Then the door burst open. Richard Hale strode in despite his pending criminal charges, followed by a man in an expensive suit who wasn't Patricia Chen. "This ends now," Hale announced. "I have a court injunction stopping this unauthorized program." "Actually, you don't," a voice said from behind him. Rebecca Chen from the ACLU entered holding documents. "This program was approved by the state intervention team. Your injunction was denied an hour ago." "You can't keep my son here against his will," Hale insisted. It's a bail condition, Officer Reyes said, appearing beside him. Which you know since you signed the papers. Hale's new lawyer stepped forward. We're filing a civil suit against Mrs. Novak for emotional distress assault and defamation. $2 million in damages. Aria felt Leah tense beside her. Her daughter had been observing quietly from the bleachers. But before Aria could respond, unexpected support came from Traven himself. Stop, he said quietly, standing up. Just stop, Dad. Everyone turned to stare at him. This is for your own good, Hale said through gritted teeth. No, it's for your reputation, your connections, your ego. Trayvon's voice grew stronger. You taught me that winning was everything, that people were either predators or prey. Look where that got us. Don't be weak, Hale snarled. Weak. Trayvon laughed bitterly. I terrorized kids half my size. I needed a gang to feel powerful. That's not strength, that's cowardice. The gymnasium was frozen watching this family drama unfold. Patricia Wong's camera crew, who'd been documenting the training session, captured every word. You're throwing away everything I built for you, Hale said, his composure cracking. Everything you built was poison, Trayvon replied. Mom left because of it. Now you're facing prison because of it. And I became a monster because of it. How dare you, Mr. Hale, the state intervention officer interrupted, entering the gym. You're violating a restraining order by being on school property. Leave now, or I'll have you arrested. Hale looked around the room, seeing no sympathy in any face. Even his lawyer was backing away, recognizing a lost cause. This isn't over, he said to Aria, but the threat lacked its previous venom. He was a man watching his empire crumble, grasping at falling pieces. After he left, Trayvon stood in the center of the gym, looking lost. I want to transfer schools, start over somewhere nobody knows me. Running away doesn't change who you are, Aria said, not unkindly. Then what does this? She gestured to the room. Facing what you've done, making amends, learning to be better. They all hate me. They hate what you did, Leah said, surprising everyone by speaking up. Whether they can forgive who you become, that depends on you. The training resumed, but the dynamic had shifted. Seeing Trayvon vulnerable, admitting fault, standing up to his father, it humanized him in a way that punishment alone never could have. During a break, Jennifer Martinez approached Aria. My son wants to speak at the Restorative Justice Circle tomorrow. Is he ready for that? He says he needs to, that keeping silent is eating him alive. The Restorative Justice Circle had been Ms. Tran's idea, a forum for victims to speak directly to their abusers, to seek understanding, if not forgiveness. It was controversial, with some parents arguing it re-traumatized victims, but many students had requested it, needing to reclaim their voices. That evening, Aria received an unexpected call. It was from a producer at a major news network. We want to do a documentary about West Harbor, about how one incident exposed systematic abuse and sparked national change. I'll have to discuss it with the families involved, Aria said carefully. Of course, but Mrs. Novak, what you've started here, it's inspiring similar movements in dozens of schools. The Novak Protocol is being discussed at the Department of Education. After the call, Aria sat with Leah in their living room. The house had become command central for the reform movement, with parents, lawyers, and activists constantly coming and going. Do you regret it? Aria asked her daughter. That morning when you pushed back, do you regret starting all this? I regret that it took violence to make people listen, Leah said thoughtfully. But no, I don't regret standing up to him. Even if you hadn't shown up, even if he'd hurt me worse, at least I would have fought back. You're braver than I was at your age. I learned from the best, Leah smiled, then grew serious. Mom, What happens when the cameras leave, when the world moves on to the next story? That's when the real work begins, Aria admitted. Changing policies is easy compared to changing culture. The next morning, the Restorative Justice Circle convened in the library, a smaller, more intimate setting than the gymnasium. Victims and perpetrators sat in a circle with Ms. Tran and a professional mediator facilitating. Trayvon sat directly across from Sarah Kim. His former crew members were scattered around the circle, each facing someone they'd hurt. The tension was palpable. The rules are simple, the mediator explained. Speak your truth. Listen without defending. Seek understanding, not necessarily forgiveness. Sarah went first, her voice trembling but determined. You made me afraid of my own school. I changed my routes, skipped classes, ate lunch in bathroom stalls, all to avoid you. You stole my education because you could. Trayvon listened, his jaw clenched, not in anger, but in what looked like pain. One by one, victims spoke. Stories of humiliation, fear, physical pain, psychological torture. Some cried, others remained stoically angry. The perpetrators were required to listen to it all, to face the full weight of their actions. When it was Trayvon's turn to respond, he struggled to find words. I thought it was funny. Just jokes, just playing around. I never saw you as real people with real feelings. You were just targets. Why? Jennifer's son asked directly. What made you think you had the right? Because nobody ever stopped me, Trayvon admitted. Every time I pushed boundaries, I got rewarded. Coaches praised my aggression. My dad said I was an alpha. Girls wanted to date me. Guys wanted to be my friend. The worse I got, the more powerful I became. That's an explanation, not an excuse, Ms. Tran interjected gently. I know. I'm not making excuses. I'm just trying to understand it myself. The circle continued for 3 hours. Not everyone found resolution. Some victims refused to accept apologies, and that was their right. But something shifted in the room. The rigid roles of victim and victimizer began to blur into a more complex understanding of how systematic failures create individual traumas. Marcus, one of Trayvon's former crew members, broke down completely. My little brother goes to elementary school. Last week he pushed a smaller kid. When I asked why, he said he was being like me. I created another bully without even realizing it. After the circle, Aria found Trayvon sitting alone outside, staring at nothing. It doesn't get easier, she told him, living with what you've done, but it does become part of who you choose to be next. How do you know? Because I've hurt people too. Different context, but pain is pain. The question is whether you let it define you or refine you. My dad's lawyers say I should claim affluenza, that I was raised without understanding consequences. That's probably a winning legal strategy, Aria admitted. But it's a lie. I knew. Every time someone begged me to stop, every time I saw fear in their eyes, I knew. I just didn't care. And now I can't sleep. I see their faces, hear them crying. He looked at her with haunted eyes. Is this what remorse feels like? Yes. It's horrible. Good. It means you're becoming human. That afternoon, the Reformed Oversight Committee met for the first time. Parents, teachers, students, and community members sat together drafting new policies with real teeth. Zero tolerance would mean zero tolerance regardless of who the perpetrator was or what they could do with a football. But even as they worked, resistance was building. A group of parents who felt the reforms had gone too far were organizing, led by Coach Banner, who despite his termination maintained significant influence. This is a witch hunt, Banner told a gathering at a local restaurant. They're destroying everything that made West Harbor great. Our property values are plummeting, another parent complained. Nobody wants to move to a district known for scandal. Then we take back control, Banner said. The recall election for school board is in 2 months. We run our own candidates, restore order. Word of the meeting reached Aria through allies still sympathetic to reform. The battle for West Harbor's soul was far from over. That evening, something unexpected happened. Trayvon appeared at Aria's door alone. I want to help, he said simply. With the training programs. I want to tell my story, show others how not to become me. Why? Because maybe if one kid sees what I've lost, what I've become, they'll choose differently. It won't undo what I did, but maybe it prevents future harm. Aria studied him carefully. The victims would have to agree. Many won't want you involved. I know, but I have to try. And your father, he'll probably disown me, but he's going to prison anyway, so... Trayvon shrugged, looking more like a lost boy than the predator he'd been. I'll discuss it with the committee, Aria said. No promises. As Trayvon left, Leah emerged from her room where she'd been listening. Do you believe him? She asked. I believe he's suffering, Aria replied. Whether that translates to genuine change, only time will tell. The next day brought a shocking revelation. During the criminal investigation into grade manipulation, investigators discovered something far worse, a hidden camera in the girls' locker room, installed with Coach Banner's knowledge to monitor for vandalism. The footage had been accessed repeatedly by several IP addresses, including ones traced to Richard Hale's home. The news broke during a live press conference, sending shockwaves through the community. What had started as a bullying scandal had become something far more sinister. Parents who'd been wavering in their support for reforms now demanded blood. The resistance movement Banner had been building collapsed overnight. Even his most ardent supporters couldn't defend hidden cameras in children's changing areas. We need a full investigation, the state intervention team announced. Every aspect of this school's administration for the past decade. That night, Aria received a call that changed everything. It was Trayvon's mother, Eleanor Hale, whom she'd briefly met at the board meeting. I need to speak with you, Eleanor said. I have evidence, things Richard kept hidden, things that go back years. They met at a coffee shop outside town. Eleanor looked exhausted but determined. I should have come forward sooner, she began, but I was scared. Richard was dangerous when crossed. What kind of evidence? Eleanor pulled out a flash drive. Financial records, bribes to college admissions, grade buying schemes, and worse, much worse. There's a network, Mrs. Novak. Parents, coaches, administrators across multiple schools. West Harbor was just one node. Aria stared at the drive, understanding its implications. This wasn't just about one school anymore. Why now? She asked. Because I saw my son becoming his father. Because those cameras in the locker room. Eleanor's voice broke. One of those girls was my niece. Richard was willing to violate his own family for power. We need to take this to the FBI. I know, but I wanted you to see it first. You started this. You should know how deep it goes. As Aria examined the files that night, she realized they'd only scratched the surface. The corruption extended to 3 other schools in the district, involving dozens of officials. West Harbor wasn't an isolated cancer, it was part of a malignant network. The next morning, FBI agents descended on West Harbor and the district offices. Computers were seized, records confiscated, and more arrests were made. The state took full control of the district, appointing emergency administrators. Through it all, the students continued their transformation. The intervention training had evolved into a peer support network. Former bullies and victims worked together, creating a new culture based on mutual respect rather than fear. But the biggest surprise came when Traven stood before a packed auditorium, not as the predator he'd been, but as a cautionary tale. "I had everything," he told the assembled students. "Popularity, power, a guaranteed future. I threw it all away because I believed hurting others made me strong. I was wrong. It made me weak, dependent on fear for validation. Don't become me. Whatever you think you gain from bullying, you lose so much more." When some students listened with skepticism, others with genuine interest. But the fact that he was there publicly owning his failures marked a change nobody had thought possible. After his speech, Leah approached him. "That took courage." "Not really," Trevon replied. "Courage would have been never becoming a bully in the first place." "Maybe. But choosing to change to face everyone you hurt, that's its own kind of bravery." For a moment, victim and victimizer stood as equals, both transformed by events that had spiraled beyond anyone's imagination. 6 weeks had passed since the FBI raid, and West Harbor High barely resembled its former self. The trophy cases that once held championship hardware now displayed student artwork and academic achievements. The hallway where Leah had been attacked had been transformed into a courage corner with messages of support and strength painted on the walls. But the most significant change was invisible. The fear that had permeated the school's atmosphere had dissipated, replaced by something tentatively approaching hope. Aria stood in the newly established Student Advocacy Center, reviewing the latest reports with Ms. Tran. The room once Coach Banner's office now served as a safe space where students could report concerns without fear of retaliation. 17 new schools have requested information about our program, Ms. Tran said, scrolling through emails. The Novak protocol is becoming a national model. "It shouldn't be named after me," Aria protested. "This was a community effort." "Maybe, but you were the catalyst. Without that moment in the hallway..." She was interrupted by urgent knocking. Sarah Kim burst in, face flushed with panic. "Mrs. Novak, something's wrong. Traven didn't show up for his community service. His mom can't reach him." Aria's stomach dropped. Despite everything, Traven had been making genuine progress. His testimony had helped convict his father and Coach Banner. His work with younger students showing signs of aggressive behavior had been remarkably effective. For him to disappear now. "When did anyone last see him?" Aria asked, already pulling out her phone. "Yesterday after school. He seemed off, quiet, more than usual." Eleanor Hale answered on the first ring, her voice tight with fear. "Aria, I found a note. He says he can't live with what he's done, that everyone would be better off without him." The words hit Aria like a physical blow. She'd seen this before. The crushing weight of genuine remorse could be as dangerous as the lack of it. "Call 911. I'll check the places he might go. Sarah, get David Park and anyone else who's been working with Traven. We need to find him." As word spread, an unexpected thing happened. Students who had every reason to hate Traven began organizing search parties, not out of forgiveness necessarily, but out of recognition that redemption required the redeemed to survive. Leah joined her mother without hesitation. "I know where he might be. The old equipment shed behind the football field. He mentioned it during the restorative circle, said it's where he used to go to escape his father's expectations." They raced to the school, finding the shed locked from the inside. Through a crack in the door, Aria could see Trayvon sitting on the floor, a bottle of pills in his hand. "Trayvon," she called out, keeping her voice calm despite her racing heart. "I'm here. Talk to me." "Go away." His voice was hollow. "You've done enough. You exposed the truth. Let me finish it." "That's not finishing anything. That's running away. From what everything I touch is poisoned. Those kids in the program, they flinch when I walk by. Their parents look at me like I'm a monster. And they're right. Leah stepped forward, pressing against the door. You're not a monster. You were one. But you're not anymore. Monsters don't feel remorse. Your mom should have let me choke. Would have saved everyone a lot of trouble. No, Aria said firmly. It would have created a martyr out of a bully. Your father would have used your injury to destroy even more lives. The only reason we achieved any change is because you survived to face consequences. Consequences? Trayvon laughed bitterly. My dad's in federal prison. My mom cries every night. Every college rejected me. I can't even get a job at McDonald's because everyone knows my face. What's the point of living like this? The point, a new voice said, is that you're 17. You have decades to make amends. They turned to see Marcus Rodriguez approaching with Jennifer Martinez's son Miguel, the boy, whose wrist Trayvon had broken. Miguel stepped forward, his voice steady. I hated you. For months I fantasized about revenge. But seeing you now trying to change, it's helping me heal. If you die, you take that healing with you. You should want me dead, Trayvon said through the door. Maybe, but I want to be better than what you were. If I celebrate your death, how am I different from the person who laughed while breaking my wrist? More students arrived, victims and bystanders alike. Each shared a piece of their story, not absolving Trayvon, but acknowledging his efforts to change. It was messy and painful, but it was human. Trayvon. Eleanor Hale arrived, breathless from running. Please, baby, don't do this. Don't let your father win. He already won. He made me into him. No, Eleanor's voice cracked. You stood up to him. You told the truth when he wanted lies. You're choosing to be better. That's not him winning, that's you winning. Inside the shed, they heard movement. The door opened slightly, and Trayvon's tear-stained face appeared. The pills were still in his hand, but his grip had loosened. I don't know how to live with what I've done, he admitted. One day at a time, Aria said slowly, reaching for the pills. One small act of good at a time, until the balance starts to shift. He let her take the bottle, collapsing into his mother's arms. The crowd of students watched in silence, not judgment, but witness to the complex reality of redemption. Officer Reyes arrived with paramedics, but the crisis had passed. As Trayvon was taken for psychiatric evaluation, Aria noticed something remarkable. Several of his former crew members had joined the search, their faces etched with concern for someone they'd once followed blindly. That evening, the documentary crew that had been filming at West Harbor captured something unprecedented. Students organized a candlelight vigil, not for Trayvon exactly, but for the idea that change was possible, that people could transform, that the cycle of violence could be broken. Patricia Wong interviewed students as they gathered. Why are you here for someone who hurt you? Sarah Kim answered, her voice clear in the evening air. Because if we don't believe people can change, then we're saying we're all forever defined by our worst moments. I refuse to believe that. The vigil grew as community members arrived. Parents who'd been on opposite sides of the reform battle stood together, united by the near tragedy. Even some of Coach Banner's supporters appeared forced to confront the human cost of the culture they'd defended. Ms. Tran addressed the crowd. What happened today shows us that accountability without hope of redemption becomes its own form of cruelty. We must hold people responsible while also holding space for their humanity. 3 days later, Richard Hale's trial began. The federal courthouse was packed as witness after witness testified about the network of corruption he'd orchestrated. But the most damaging testimony came from an unexpected source, Coach Banner, who'd made a plea deal in exchange for full disclosure. Richard Hale controlled everything, Banner testified. He decided who played, who got scholarships, whose complaints got buried. He had dirt on half the school board financial leverage over the other half. West Harbor was his kingdom, and our job was to serve his prince. When asked why he participated, Banner's answer chilled the courtroom. Because it worked. We won championships. Kids got into good colleges. Property values stayed high. Everyone benefited except the victims, and they were told that was the price of excellence. The prosecutor presented evidence from Eleanor's flash drive, bribes, blackmail, systematic grade fraud spanning years. But the most shocking revelation came when they presented recovered data from the hidden cameras. Mr. Hale accessed this footage 347 times over 2 years, the prosecutor stated. Not for security, but for his own gratification. The courtroom erupted. Eleanor Hale fled in tears. Even Hale's defense team looked disgusted. The man who'd wielded such power was exposed as not just corrupt, but genuinely predatory. Outside the courthouse, Aria spoke to the media. This isn't just about Richard Hale. It's about every system that prioritizes winning over well-being, every institution that protects predators for the sake of reputation. The guilty verdict came swift and harsh, 25 years federal prison. As Hale was led away in handcuffs, he passed Aria and Leah. For a moment his mask slipped, revealing not the powerful businessman, but a hollow man who'd destroyed everything he'd claimed to build. "I hope you're satisfied," he snarled. "No," Aria replied. "I'll be satisfied when no child has to fear going to school." Back at West Harbor, the transformation continued. The peer intervention program had become a model, with students teaching students how to stand up safely. The culture shift was tangible. Reporting concerns was no longer snitching, but community care. Trayvon, released from psychiatric hold with ongoing therapy requirements, returned to complete his senior year. His presence remained complicated. Some students couldn't forgive, and that was their right. But he worked quietly tutoring younger students, sharing his story at other schools, living proof that monsters were made and something not born, and could be unmade with effort. 1 month before graduation, West Harbor received an unexpected honor recognition from the Department of Education as a transformation school, highlighting their journey from scandal to solution. The ceremony brought national attention, with education officials, activists, and media descending on the campus. But the most meaningful moment came when students took the stage. Leah spoke first, her voice strong and clear. 8 months ago, I was choked in our hallway while people filmed. Today, that same hallway is where students learn to protect each other. We didn't just change policies, we changed ourselves. Sarah Kim followed. We learned that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite fear. Every time we speak up, we honor everyone who couldn't. Then, surprisingly, David Park brought Trayvon on stage. The audience stirred uncomfortably, but David raised his hand for silence. "This is hard for many of us," David acknowledged. "But part of our transformation means acknowledging that people can change. Trayvon will live with his actions forever, as will his victims. But he's also working to ensure others don't follow his path. That work matters." Trayvon spoke briefly, his voice rough with emotion. "I don't deserve forgiveness, and I'm not asking for it. I'm asking you to learn from my mistakes. Every time you feel the urge to hurt someone for sport, for status, for power, remember where it leads. It leads here to destroying everything and everyone around you, including yourself." The audience response was mixed, Some applauded, others sat in stony silence. But nobody denied the power of the moment, the complexity of justice and redemption playing out in real time. After the ceremony, Aria found herself standing in the transformed hallway with Marcus Rodriguez. Student artwork covered the walls, including a mural depicting hands reaching out to help not hurt. "You did it," Marcus said quietly. "You changed this place." "We did it," Aria corrected. "And it's not done. Culture change takes generations. But it starts somewhere. It started here that morning when you refused to let violence be normalized." Eleanor Hale approached them, looking years older, but somehow more at peace. "I wanted to thank you," she said to Aria. "You saved my son not that morning in the hallway, but after. When he wanted to end everything, you showed him another way." "He's saving himself," Aria replied. "Every day he chooses to be better, he saves himself." As graduation approached college, acceptance letters arrived. Despite everything, many students thrived. Sarah Kim got into her dream art school. David Park received a football scholarship, not Division I, but he didn't care. He'd learned there were more important things than prestigious programs built on toxic foundations. Leah received multiple acceptances, choosing a journalism program. "I want to tell stories that matter," she explained. "Stories that expose truth and create change." Even Trevon found a path forward community college with plans to study social work. "Maybe I can help kids before they become what I was," he said. The graduation ceremony itself became a testament to transformation. The valedictorian speech, delivered by a student who'd been one of Trevon's victims, focused not on achievement, but on resilience. "We survived more than high school," she said. "We survived a culture that tried to break us. And we didn't just survive, we transformed it. We are the generation that said no more." When Trevon walked across the stage to receive his diploma, the reaction was telling. No cheers, but no boos either. Just acknowledgement of a complicated journey toward redemption. He shook the principal's hand, the new principal committed to maintaining the reforms, and walked off stage into an uncertain but possible future. After the ceremony, Aria stood with Leah watching families celebrate. The Kims, the Martinezes, even Eleanor Hale, all united by trauma, but also by triumph. "Was it worth it?" Leah asked. "Everything we went through." Aria considered the question. The death threats they'd received, the legal battles, the emotional toll, it had been overwhelming. But looking at the transformed school, the empowered students, the systems now in place to protect the vulnerable. "Ask me in 10 years, Aria said, "when we see if it lasts." But the answer came sooner than expected. That summer, news broke that 3 students at a school 2 states away had intervened when witnessing an assault. When asked why, one responded, "We learned about the Novak protocol. We learned that filming isn't helping. We learned to stand up, not stand by." The ripples had become waves. On the first anniversary of the hallway incident, West Harbor held its first Bystanders Day. Students, staff, and community members gathered not to celebrate, but to recommit. The morning assembly featured a powerful moment. Every person who'd filmed the original assault stood and apologized not just to Leah, but to the principle of human dignity they'd failed to protect. Trayvon attended standing in the back, still navigating his complex position in the narrative. When the assembly ended, Miguel, whose wrist he'd broken, approached him. "I'll never forget what you did," Miguel said. "But I want you to know your work with the younger kids, it matters. My little brother was becoming a bully. Your talk changed him. So, thank you for that." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement. Sometimes that's all redemption can hope for. As the sun set on that anniversary day, Aria stood once more in the transformed hallway. The spot where her daughter had been assaulted now bore a plaque. On this site, a community chose courage over complicity. May we never forget the price of silence or the power of standing up. Leah joined her, no longer the frightened girl who'd walked these halls in fear, but a young woman who'd helped transform them. "Mom," she said, "I've been thinking about that question, was it worth it? I know the answer now." "What is it?" "It's the wrong question. The right question is, could we have lived with ourselves if we'd done nothing? And that answer is no." Aria pulled her daughter close, thinking of all the students who now walked these halls without fear, all the bullies who'd been stopped before they could become Trayvons, all the schools implementing their protocols. The war against bullying would never be won completely. Human cruelty was too persistent for that. But battles could be won, schools could be transformed, and cultures could shift. It started with one person saying, "No." One parent refusing to accept the unacceptable, one community choosing change over comfort. As they left the building, Aria's phone buzzed with a message from a parent in another state. "My daughter is being bullied. The school won't act. What do I do?" Aria smiled slightly and began typing. "First, document everything. Second, know you're not alone. Third, remember that change is possible. Let me tell you what worked for us." And the fight continued. But now there was a roadmap, a protocol, and most importantly, proof that ordinary people could stand up to systematic injustice and win. West Harbor High would never be perfect. No institution could be. But it had become something far more valuable, a place where students learned not just algebra and history, but courage and compassion, where standing up mattered more than standing out, where the measure of strength was not who you could hurt, but who you could help. The transformation was complete, but the work would never end. And that perhaps was the most important lesson of all, that creating safe, dignified spaces for children wasn't a destination, but a daily choice requiring constant vigilance and unwavering commitment. As the Novaks drove home, they passed the billboard that had once celebrated West Harbor's football championships. Now it displayed something different, a simple message in bold letters: "Courage is contagious. Be an upstander." Below it, in smaller text, "Inspired by the students of West Harbor High who chose to change their world." The revolution that had started with a mother protecting her daughter had become something neither of them had imagined, a movement that would outlive them both, rippling outward in waves of change, one school, one student, one moment of courage at a time.